Hello, my name is Ali, and much like most of the civilized world, I am in quarantine. Quarantine. English isn't my first language, so you have to excuse weird pronunciations. And, much like most of the civilized world, I am extremely bored. So, why not? This is getting recorded on a very, very old handycam and on a voice recorder here. So if I'm leaning back, it's because I want my voice to be heard. Yes, it's all rustic, so there is no crew. I hit play and I run to the seat. I'm not home alone. In other words, there are people outside, so you might hear a car or TV or my family yelling. Yeah, we are going very, very rustic here. I very recently, watched the movie Star Wars Rise of the Skywalker. Now I know I'm quite late to the bandwagon, if there ever was, but I have a few words to say about this. I usually write my reviews, but I thought I'm bored, I have a camera, I have a voice recorder, why not record something? It might work better this way. Who knows? It might not. Welcome, I guess. This is a series I like to call Born in Quarantine. And the first episode is about Star Wars Rise of the Skywalker. Where to start? Where did it all start? Well, the year was either late 2013 or early 2014. I know because it's been some years since I watched The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and I was starting to follow cinema more thoroughly. I found my passion, one might say. And I did not know what Star Wars was. I never watched it as a kid. I didn't knew what it was. My knowledge of Star Wars was limited that it was mentioned a couple of times, more than a couple of times, on How I Met Your Mother, the TV show.
Okay, if Stella doesn't like this movie, I can't marry her.
No, you can't.
You want to watch it again?
Yes, I do.
So yeah, that's where I knew the series from. But I was starting to follow cinema more fully, and I wanted to know, what is this fabled Star Wars? I had a few franchises that I used to follow when I was younger. There was Lord of the Rings, which is still one of my favorite, not only movie series, but the book. It's one of my favorite franchises ever. I don't like the Hobbit movies. I love the world. And so my childhood was mostly Lord of the Rings and a little bit of Star Trek. Now, the reason Star Trek got in was the name was more famous. I liked Leonard Nimoy. I knew him from, Lord of the Rings. He did Ballad of Bilbo Baggins. And so I knew him from there, and I said, let's watch this. And I love Star Trek. even though Star Trek is also dying in a horrible, horrible way. But we'll keep that for another time. Why am I saying all of this? It's because when Star Wars, well, came to my attention and I watched it, I was quite ready to jump into it. I loved fantasies, I loved Lord of the Rings, I loved Narnia. Huge side note, Harry Potter. I only read the books, I watched the movies, and from time to time, I'm called the younger version of Hagrid. Aside from that, not really my cup of tea, one might say, in a stereotypical British accent. I loved fantasy and I enjoy space, not in the 2001 Space Odyssey or Gravity way, the scary space, but as a mean to tell a story. Because the Star Trek used it that way, so I was quite ready to jump into Star Wars. And right off the bat, I did a few things wrong. People talk about those idiots that watched Star Wars movies in order, meaning they watched Phantom Menace first, then Attack of the Clones, then Revenge of the Sith, then A New Hope, then Empire Strikes Back, and then Return of the Jedi. I am one of those idiots. It's either late 2013 or early 2014, and I'm watching this movie series that everyone apparently loves, and I mean loves. And, well, you might imagine, I had high expectations, and my expectations were not met by the Phantom Menace. I did not like this guy. I did not like this guy. I hated this guy. And everything seemed a little too silly. It was too silly because, well, it was Phantom Menace. What? I did not know that yet. So, my first encounter with the Fabled series was Jar Jar Binks and Qui-Gon Jinn. Thankfully, that sets my expectations. It's very, very low at this point. So, Attack of the Clones, I watched it. I said, hey, Saruman is in it. Saruman is in it. Back then, I didn't know who Christopher Lee was. God, good old days. Dark days. Because I fucking love Christopher Lee. And one of the reasons I go a little easier on Attack of the Clones. Attack of the Clones is boring. That's his biggest crime. It's not stupid as much as it is boring. It is stupid also, but it's more boring. Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith was the one where I managed to quite understand what the Star Wars was about. It wasn't about stories, it wasn't about characters, it was about, how do I say this, machinery. Yes, that's the perfect word. It's about machinery. You have these art books, which are half of Star Wars, if you ask people, and they are bad. I read a couple of them, and the lengths they go to explain stupid little details is mind-boggling. They're bad, but that's what Star Wars is about. You go into the world to see this machinery, or you don't go in to see characters and Count Dooku. Who the fuck is Count Dooku? Who the hell is Anakin Skywalker? It set my expectations, and then I went into the original trilogy, A New Hope. I was much stupider back then, and I did not know what I was watching. That's one way to say it. What I'm saying is, how did we go from this to this? I could not understand it. How did everything just, went back? It did, but in chronological order, it went forward. So how the hell is everything looking older and dirtier? But that said, in A New Hope, I've met my favorite character, Grand Moff Tarkin. And back then, I didn't even know he was portrayed by another amazing actor, Peter Cushing. I love that guy. There was this black helmeted dude that apparently everyone loved. It came out in the end of episode 3, and apparently it was a big deal. I didn't know that. And I watched it, and back then I was confused because I knew who Anakin Skywalker was. And I was confused as, what the fuck is Ben Kenobi talking about? Anakin isn't dead. Well, that's the boon of watching them with numbers instead of release years. By the way, I watched them special edition, with all the added crap, CG crap. So I haven't watched the original versions because I don't really care, to be honest. I don't care to watch them again and in that order. I might do it for Empire Strikes Back because that movie I actually like. Spoiler alerts, I like Empire Strikes Back, which is the next movie. I watched it. I really liked it. I thought the story was better. The direction was 100 times better. It didn't feel old like A New Hope did. It felt vibrant. It felt like a good movie. Then Return of the Jedi made me realize my low expectations were kind of right. Return of the Jedi is a movie I highly, highly dislike because it gets a pass because it's not as bad as the prequels, but it's still a bad movie. Ewoks are stupid. Han Solo and Leia, they are, how do I say it, unnecessary. Partly unnecessary. I don't like Return of the Jedi. I don't like to talk about Return of the Jedi because there is nothing to talk about. It's a third movie in a trilogy. It brings everything to an end, a bad end. I didn't like how easily Vader was persuaded to return to his Anakin Skywalker persona. So that's it. I watched it and I was okay with it. I watched a few of the shows. I watched the old Clone Wars show, the 2D animated one. I really like that one. I think it's still one of the best things that has the stamp of Star Wars on it. I watched the new Clone Wars. It was good. If you have some time to waste, you're in a quarantine. Watch it. And Rebels, I don't remember if Rebels was on back then or not. I think I watched Rebels after The Force Awakens. I don't remember that very well, and I'm sorry, I should have done my research. I have not. This is very rustic. I have some notes, and some orange juice, but aside from that, I have nothing. And so, it was over. I read some stuff about how Lucas did, and it was sold to Disney apparently, and the special editions apparently was something we needed to hate. And it was easy for me, I never loved it to begin with. Then came the news that a new Star Wars was coming out. By then I was quite hyped, to be honest. J.J. Abrams have ruined Star Trek, but everyone had said Star Trek 2009, Star Trek Into Darkness, terrible Star Trek movies, pretty good Star Wars movies. So I was intrigued. With that said, I wasn't blown away by Force Awakens. In hindsight, it was harmless. It was like Return of the Jedi. I mean, Return of the Jedi was a worse movie, but it was harmless. It didn't need to exist, but its existence wasn't the worst thing out there. And, well, there wasn't any character I was attached to in The Force Awakens, but to be perfectly honest, there wasn't any character I attached to in the old and in the prequel series either. I never felt close to these characters. There were characters I respected, some of them, And the rest was just there. They were fillers, they were red shirts, to use a Star Trek term. Aside from Grand Moff Tarkin, but Star Wars is really unfair to Grand Moff Tarkin. Side note, definitely read the Tarkin book. It's amazing. I don't read many of the books, but this one was amazing. But yeah, Grand Moff Tarkin wasn't really marketable. You don't have Grand Moff Tarkin salt and pepper shakers. I hope. Okay, I am searching for it, and apparently there is not, which is good. There is a weird nesting doll that I'm probably gonna put a photo of here. But aside that, thankfully there isn't a Grand Moff Tarkin salt shaker. Good to know. So yeah, not the most marketable character, which meant not the most loved character. Yes, Star Wars is a business more than a story. If you bring money, you'll become Darth Vader. If not, you don't become Darth Vader. That's the logical conclusion. So yeah, Force Awakens came. It was a rehash. Everyone was right. And to be honest, I was way more forgiving about the stuff that it set up. In hindsight, I shouldn't have been, but well, I said, okay, we don't know who Snoke is, we didn't know who Palpatine was either. So we're gonna see that in the next movies. We don't know who Rey is, but we didn't know who Luke was either. So we're gonna see that in the next movies. A lot of stuff got set up in The Force Awakens, and none of it was resolved. Because the next movie was The Last Jedi. Now, with the chance of alienating almost everyone, I actually liked The Last Jedi. After The Empire Strikes Back, it's actually my favorite Star Wars movie. It's not perfect. It's far from perfect. There is these two idiots that ruin the whole movie every time they're on the screen. So much excess that could be cut down. It's not perfect, but there are so many good ideas in it. You have the abilities of the Force explained better. You have what I love, which I want to call, I'm sure there is a name for it, I'm sure, but I'm gonna call the anti-Jesus making, which is you bring this concept that there is this special, in this case, family, and so anyone can have the Force. Rey's parents are nobodies because anyone can have the Force. You see where I'm going? It would make more sense if this was the last film in the trilogy. I accept. As the middle film, it takes a lot, destroys it, doesn't set up much for the next one. But still a good movie, still some good ideas, and I liked it. The fact I'm going to talk about this scene because it comes up in Rise of the Skywalker, about the scene where Luke throws the lightsaber. I actually like that scene because, again, I didn't have any special connection to the old series, so why would I care? It was a good idea. The hero that everyone thought must be the hero wasn't. He was tired. He didn't want to be that. He was tired. I really get connected to that. But actually, it's not a good middle movie. It threw away a lot that could be better explained. When Snoke is dead, we feel nothing because we don't know who Snoke was. It would have worked better if there was a middle movie and Snoke was, I don't know, Darth Vader. You see what I mean. Good movie nevertheless. But again, now there was two other movies, Rogue One and Solo. Rogue One was a piece of shit. It gave us this monstrosity, and I will never forgive it because unlike most, I actually liked Grand Moff Tarkin. Solo was so forgettable that I already forgot I saw it. Spoiler alert, I did not like The Rise of Skywalker. In my notes, I took notes during the movie. Even though I watched it at home, I paused and I took notes. It wasn't like I'm writing and movie is going on. But yeah, in short, it's crap. It's bullshit. It's a bad movie. Folks, it had one shot of John Williams, which I appreciate. I love the man. He's a great composer. Billy D. Williams was fun, and Richard E. Grant is amazing. He's the, how do I say it? He seems like the reincarnation of Grand Moff Tarkin, which I loved. British actor, high commanding voice. That scene where he shoots Hux is just perfect. He's perfect. He's a very underappreciated actor, and I would love to see him in more stuff. What about the cons? The movie had a lot of those. Side note that I said I'd come back to it. Star Wars is never a story for adults. Its main demographic is kids. It works as a fantasy fairy tale, but in its way, it paints a really easy black and white portrait. I know it's coming like an ironic statement from a fan of Lord of the Rings, but I say that in Lord of the Rings, a lot of trust is broken. You know, you have Saruman, which becomes Saruman. You have Boromir, which fucking dies. J.J. Abrams dies, you know, not killed and then, oh no, he was in another battle. What I'm talking about, the Chewie scene, it was stupid. You try to, I don't know, get emotion out of us. The only emotion we needed was when Chewie fucking yelled when he understood that Leia was dead because he was alone. Fuck you. Okay, I don't digress. I do digress. So, English, second language, you already know it. Star Wars is very simple. Evil can never win, and good shall always prevail, even if it's completely cliched. The good thing about prequels was that good ultimately lost. Yes, I said good thing about prequels, but good in it lost, because now you had the Emperor and Darth Vader. Everyone was downtrodden. Granted, they would get into the original trilogy and good will ultimately prevail, but they had at least, if you watched it like I did, the first trilogy I watched was the prequels. The good was lost. That's a good thing, because it gives you a different point of view. Talking about another Disney-owned property, Avengers Infinity War. That was a great movie, and good in it ultimately lost. Anyways, now I digress. But in it, good shall prevail, it will prevail, no matter the cost. There is another thing about Star Wars. I come from a world of Tolkien and Star Trek, and both of these worlds are very rich. Granted, both of these worlds have produced shit too. But both of these worlds are so well developed. You know, you have the world of Tolkien, which There are books and books, and the man lost his fucking mind over this. Then there is the world of Star Trek. It has a good setting. You know, you have the Confederation, you have Romulans, you have Klingons, and all of them have established motives, cultures, established everything. You know there is such a thing as this does not work in a Star Trek setting, because you can imagine that setting and you know what that setting is. This simple line does not matter in Star Wars. Star Wars is what the writer wants it to be. The Force is limitless. You can tell it to do anything, and there is no way you can dispute that. Yes, there is Wikipedia, but fuck that shit. I mean, seriously. If you are a fan of that, fuck you too. This is the only issue I'm putting my foot down, because I think that trying to fill plot holes because you love something is an idiotic thing. I love the movie Hunchback of Notre Dame, the animated one. The third act of that movie is very bad. I don't come up with stupid theories that was good just because I didn't have certain information. I thought it was bad. It's bad, but I still love it. World of Star Wars is bankrupt. You have a family, Skywalker. The whole universe revolves around them, and revolves around this magical force called the Force. It can do whatever you want it to do, which makes writing for Star Wars 10 times easier than writing for Star Trek, because the Star Trek has established world. Star Wars doesn't. And because of that, it revolves around what the original trilogy was, because at some point fans got involved, and as much as I hate the prequels, and as much as I hate George Lucas, I at least need to tip my hat. I don't have a hat. At the very least, I will tip my hat. Was it worth it? No. Because he had the courage to give his fans what they didn't want. Yes, midichlorians is stupid, Jar Jar is stupid, but they at least knew, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it just revolves around that. And one of the things I loved about Last Jedi was it tried to distance itself. Yes, Ben was already Solo. We couldn't save that, but Rey wasn't. Rey wasn't Rey Palpatine. Rey was a nobody. Rey was someone new, a new bloodline. Rey Smith. Rey, I don't know. I'm not good with last names, but you know what I mean. It could have been something new. But J.J. Abrams is a coward. I think the scene that a lot of people are talking about, nobody talks about this movie beside me now. One of the things people were talking about was the scene where Chewie gets a medallion. And I think the reason it's so insulting is that it's not a story moment, it's not an emotional moment, it's just there because some fans were still clamoring about it. They loved it. The rest of us, no. And that's the movie's ultimate failure. It keeps jabbing insults at The Last Jedi, acting like, oh, it was Last Jedi's fault that this movie is this bad. It's not Last Jedi's fault, it was J.J. Abrams' fault. Why? Because I am pretty sure he did not know how to continue The Force Awakens. How do I know that? It's because he didn't even know how to continue his Star Trek series, or how to end Super 8, or Lost. He's involved in Westworld. You see the pattern. With that said, I understand why Last Jedi is not innocent here. It's guilty of doing a lot of bad things to set up this movie, but it set up some good things too. Why not use them? Why make Rey granddaughter of Palpatine? It's stupid. and lazy, and ultimately it doesn't go anywhere. And that's Rise of the Skywalker. It's the movie that is a string of scenes cut together that nothing goes anywhere. I love Richard E. Grant. His character gets control out of nowhere. It's introduced out of nowhere, but so was Grand Moff Tarkin. But the difference is, Grand Moff Tarkin seemed like a character. I am sure if Richard E. Grant wasn't playing General Pride, but if it wasn't Richard E. Grant playing that character, I would have hated that character. Because it wasn't a character. It was a plot point. And I hate it when characters become plot points. And that's everyone in this movie. Poe is a plot point. Rey is a plot point. Palpatine is a plot. Nothing happens in this movie. Nothing. And yet it seems like everything is happening because it's disjointed and all of that stuff. I'm very late to the party, and Red Letter Media already did a better job explaining what's wrong with the movie, but I'm saying from my point of view, from someone who didn't care about Star Wars and watched it very late and watched it with the prequels first, I hate this movie because it's giving me nothing as a movie. Star Wars has Mandalorian now, so I can't really say there is nothing in Star Wars I care about. Well, there was always Empire Strikes Back. Great movie, great movie. But Mandalorian is a good show. That's as far as I can go with Star Wars now. Rise of Skywalker is a bad movie. It's disjointed. The characters make no sense. Palpatine makes no sense. There are so much fan service in this movie that I'm pretty sure some of the fans might feel insulted. It's so safe. It's such a coward that I don't know. I really dislike this movie. Is it incoherent? Yes. Is it poorly written? Yes. Is the humor cringeworthy? God, yes. But I've seen all of that in Star Wars before. I've seen it in Return of the Jedi. I've seen it in the prequels. I've seen it in Rogue One and Solo. Why does this one makes me so mad and so disheartened? Mainly because I don't want to hate it. That's the thing. I don't want to hate Star Wars. Star Wars is like something that was written for me, you know. It's fantasy and it's in space. And it has Empire Strikes Back. That's a really good movie. And it has Last Jedi. And it has Grand Moff Tarkin. And Christopher Lee was at some point involved with it. But I hate Rise of the Skywalker because it makes me realize Star Wars has always been bankrupt. When you do something new like The Last Jedi does, you get... I'm sorry, I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation. I butchered pronunciation, but when you do something new in Star Wars, you get scrutinized. Why? Well, Wikipedia, that's part of it. I'm gonna try to go a little bit deep. The thing about the Star Trek is, when you see a bad Star Trek movie, you try to say, well, the universe is still there. Star Wars doesn't have that. Star Wars is bankrupt, is simple. It doesn't have a world, so the viewer, the audience, gets to create that one. And that's the thing. When you create something, you're gonna love it. And if someone comes, Ryan Johnson or Lawrence Kasdan or the man who created it, even though there is some stuff about how he didn't, but I don't know, there are better informed people on this issue than me. But when they come and try to add something to this world that you, the audience, created, you are not going to let them, because it's not the world you created. And Star Wars, being so empty, gives thousands of people, millions of people words to create, and it would be okay. I created my own, but if you allow this world to shape and evolve, most of the people, because of nostalgia and weaponizing nostalgia, which is another subject that, God, I really like to talk about that, but I don't want to talk about it now. Probably later. Who knows? But weaponizing nostalgia, that they become fierce because they think, well, they're attacking my world. Attack us, and I'm defending it. So yeah, Rise of the Skywalker is a bad movie. It's a bad movie because J.J. Abrams is a bad writer. Chris Terrio is a worse writer. And the fans didn't want the world to change. They wanted Skywalker. They wanted Rey Palpatine. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. Overall, bad movie. There are a lot of issues with the story as well, just to go over them. They don't make much sense. There are things that set up but never answered, and things that get answered without being set up. Hux is a spy, comes out of nowhere. There is no planning because of that, and it shows. The thing that Finn wanted to say to Rey, what the fuck was that? We don't know. There are a lot of stuff like that. Space horses are back though. Is the movie devoid of value? That's another question. I find value in all of the Star Wars movies. The original, Grand Moff Tarkin, Empire Strikes Back, great movie. Return of the Jedi, as much as I despise it, has some good character moments for Vader and for Luke. The prequels, as much as I despise them, and as much as they, gave me a bad taste of the world, they had something of value in them. The Phantom Menace had that amazing John Williams score. You know the one. It's amazing. I want to die with that score. I don't want to. Please don't kill me. The second one, Attack of the Clones, had Count Dooku, which interesting character and amazing actor. Revenge of the Sith is the one that I really hit a blank with, the same way I do with Rise of Skywalker, but I have to say it's a bad movie. Fuck Revenge of the Sith too. That's a bad movie too. Then you have Force Awakens, as much as I said, it lacks in many areas and it's a rehash. I have to say I got a bit emotional when Han and Leia were talking to each other, because nostalgia. And seeing them old, it felt like they were a bit older. Yes, it's stupid that Han is still smuggling stuff. It's stupid, but they were good stuff that showed they aged. Last Jedi, I already talked what I loved about it. Rise of Skywalker does have value in the pros. It has one shot of John Williams. It has Richard E. Grant. There is one scene that I genuinely didn't expect, and why it doesn't get 0 out of 10, it gets like 1.5 out of 10. 2 out of 10 at most. Is the scene where they tell Chewie Leia is dead and he screams. I already talked about it. It's powerful because you know this character. But even that is not because of this movie. You know this character because of the original trilogy. I don't know. I did not enjoy Rise of the Skywalker. This was unscripted, if you couldn't tell. Haha. And it might be because I rambled on a lot. I didn't want to do a script. You tell me whether it worked or not. It probably didn't. I tried to write more notes other than it's crap, it's bullshit. Richard E. Grant is good. And that one shit of John Williams. And Billy D. Williams was fun to watch, but he's a fun actor. I love him. I love the man. But yeah, I tried to write more notes, but it was an experiment. I was bored. We are in quarantine. But yeah, Rise of Skywalker, bad movie. Do not recommend. If you haven't seen it already, which I doubt. But yeah, don't watch it. Watch The Mandalorian though. I want to love Star Wars, I just can't. Well, if this worked, that worked, and you can't see, but that's my computer, that worked, you'll probably see me again.